Shalom, call Halayim Yahweh Ba'ashem Yahweh Shai Ba'ashem Rachak Wadash, and Shani Kabad, Gadawala Requabs, Quanim Nabu, Washalayakim Nabu, and that is double honors to our elders and apostles of Great Millstone, and Shalawam, Wabarakim, Labakayim, Shalayasharala, and that is peace and blessings to the elect of Israel, and also may a double portion of the Holy Spirit be put upon the brothers that are out there on the highways and byways, offering your bodies as a living sacrifice out there on the front lines. So I want to jump into this article from express.co.uk, and it's entitled, Donald Trump has made U.S. an untrustworthy ally. NATO insider warns Putin handed gift. So before we get into the article, let's first read this quick scripture. Obadiah, verse 7. All the men of thy confederacy have brought thee even to the border. The men that were at peace with thee have deceived thee and prevailed against thee. They that eat thy bread have laid a wound under thee. There is none understanding in him. It says, they that eat thy bread have laid a wound under thee. Let's see what that specific phrase is going into. So first, we'll take off airplane mode. Hopefully no one calls. Let's look up that word bread. We should all know what it is in the Hebrew. The word for bread in the Hebrew is lacham. And of course, bread, food, grain, as you come down here to the KJV, I like that it says victuals because basically the bread right here is referring to aid. And victuals, when you go into it, are those things that are necessary for life, necessary to live. Now, also with that being said, I want to go back and look at this verse in the different translation comparisons. Now remember, it says, and prevailed against thee, they that eat thy bread have laid a wound under thee. When you look at it in the CSB, it says, everyone who has a treaty with you will drive you to the border. Everyone at peace with you will deceive and conquer you. Those who eat your bread will set a trap for you. He will be unaware of it. Now, this is a prophecy referring to Esau, Edom, who are the self-proclaimed white people today. Now, when you also get into it, we're also going to align this up with Revelation, the 17th chapter, and that, the judgment of that great whore that sitteth upon the beast, because basically all the NATO allies and all of the EU are going to come up against America. It's going to come up against Esau, Edom. It's going to come up against that great whore that sitteth upon that beast in many waters. And we're starting to see that as we go into this article right here. So let me now turn airplane mode back on, and we'll read a little bit of this article. Bear with me because this article tends to jump and reload if I didn't say that already, so just bear with me if that ever does happen. So it says, Donald Trump has come under scrutiny after he withdrew U.S. aid or bread from Ukraine and allegedly asked its president to investigate Democratic candidate Joe Biden, making the U.S. an untrustworthy ally, a NATO insider tells Express.co. And like I mentioned, this is going to be a part of the reason that makes the NATO allies come up against the U.S. It says Trump faces an impeachment probe over allegedly asking a foreign leader to investigate a political rival, something the U.S. president has described as a joke case. There have been equally damning consequences for Ukraine, whose president, Volodymyr Zelensky, has since agreed to a deal with Russia President Vladimir Putin for a mechanism for elections in disputed Crimea, which the Kremlin controversially annexed in 2014. So basically what that says is this. I was doing a little bit of research, and Ukraine is neither a NATO ally nor is it an EU ally. However, Ukraine has an agreement with NATO, and it also has an agreement with the EU. But with that being said, the Ukraine applied a few years back to become a NATO ally. However, because of different diplomatic, ties and legislation, they never officially became a member of NATO. But the Ukrainian people, I think it was back in like 2014 or 2016, a poll was taken and 60% of the Ukrainian members had said that they were with becoming a NATO ally. So that was basically on the horizon, and talks were still happening right now on a global scale for that to happen. But we have to also keep in mind that in 2014, I think it was in 2014, the Russian military invaded Ukraine. They invaded Ukraine. And now all of a sudden, with America taking its aid out of or from Ukraine, now the president of Ukraine is randomly making a deal with Vladimir Putin, the Russian president who previously had invaded Ukraine. So you have two things going on here, or basically you have two different global outlooks. You have people saying, well, one, this looks bad on your part, America. This looks bad on your part, Trump, because you're basically a so-called enemy, or we can say it as it is. The U.S. and Russia look at each other as enemies, and then all of a sudden you have Ukraine siding with your enemy. One, that's the first global outlook. And then two, the second global outlook, as we're going to continue reading, is that basically, well, if you have Ukraine that applied to become a NATO ally, a NATO member, and has an agreement with NATO, and America has been giving aid to Ukraine for years, all of a sudden now the U.S. pulled back aid. Well, now its NATO allies are going to say, we're starting to look at the U.S. as an untrustworthy ally, because who knows if one day randomly the U.S. and Trump are going to say, well, now we're going to take away aid from this country and that country that we have ties with. So those are the two basic points that this article is going into. And I really just summed it all up, but we're still going to read just a little bit to see if there's any other meat that we can take out of it. So Jim Townsend worked in the Barack Obama administration as Deputy Assistant Secretary of Defense for European and NATO policy. Mr. Townsend believes that Trump's policy on Ukraine has hurt trust in the U.S. while playing right into Putin's hands. And I basically just explained why all of that is the case. He said, the gift to Putin is that it has made Ukraine not trust the U.S. in terms of our commitment and predictability of our assistance. Basically what I mentioned. No matter the president of the U.S. going forward, the Ukrainians will feel that U.S. assistance and commitment to Ukraine is not a sure thing, that it can be used as leverage and something they can't depend on. And that's the point right there. Let me see if there's anything else. That's horrible because one thing. Oh, yeah. That's horrible because that's one thing the U.S. has built up since the end of World War II. And we've all come to depend on it. Depend on what? U.S.'s aid. This last paragraph right here. This is particularly troublesome for the U.S. and NATO allies because of what Mr. Townsend describes as bullying by Russia, which is really not, in the region as they look to control a region on the doorstep of the Western Alliance. And of course, they're painting the picture like Russia is to blame for this and they're doing the bullying. But look, America is taking away aid to a country in which it's been giving aid or bread to for years to come, which is now making its NATO allies say, well, we don't know if we can trust America now. And this is eventually what's going to happen as a result. This is the book of Revelation, chapter 17. We'll start reading at verse 1. And there came one of the seven angels, which had the seven vials, and talked with me, saying unto me, Come hither, I will shew unto thee the judgment of the great whore that sitteth upon many waters. We know that the great whore is referring specifically to America, and that the many waters represent the peoples and multitudes and nations. So now, as we jump down, where do we want to start? We'll read at verse 10. It says, "And there are 7 kings. 5 are fallen," just so we can get into prophecy a little bit. The 5 that were fallen are referring to the Greeks, Germania Major, Germania Minor, and French and Spain. Verse 11, "And the beast that was," and hold on, did we read all of it? Verse 10, "And there are 7 kings, 5 are fallen," and then it says, "One is," that's the Roman Empire, "and the other is not yet come," that's the British Empire, "and when he cometh, he must continue a short space, and the beast that was, and is not, even he, is the 8th, and is of the 7, the 8th is referring to America, "and goeth into perdition. And the 10 horns which thou sawest are 10 kings." Today those 10 horns represent the EU nations. "And the 10 horns which thou sawest are 10 kings, which have received no kingdom as yet, but receive power as kings 1 hour with the beast." So remember that bread. It says, "but receive power as kings 1 hour with the beast," because the beast is basically the power structure that is made up of NATO and the EU. That's what the beast represents, that power structure that governs the entire world on a global standpoint, that's made up of the beast. That's made up of NATO and the EU. Now, verse 13 says, and the point is that it says they received power as kings 1 hour with the beast. "These have one mind, and shall give their power and strength unto the beast." So all of those nations are basically coming together and saying, look, we're going to make diplomatic ties. We're going to set up ambassadors that are going to rendezvous and create different legislature. And then, of course, you have that great whore that sits on top of that beast, riding that beast, that's controlling that entire power structure that governs the entire world. And that great whore gives out aid and bread to these different countries in exchange for, of course, I'll say the countries, I'll say it like this, those countries are basically giving their power into that beast and basically that whore, so that whore, which is America, can give them that aid in exchange for aid. Hope I didn't confuse anybody. Now verse 14. No, we're going to jump down now to verse 16. "And the 10 horns which thou sawest upon the beast, these shall hate the whore, and shall make her desolate and naked, and shall eat her flesh, and burn her with fire." Because you're going to have all those NATO allies and all these different countries that are part of the European Union, and they're going to turn around and they're going to basically say, look, we're not with America anymore. We don't like the wine that Babylon is feeding us. And they're going to turn around, and it's all biblical prophecy, that during World War III, they're going to shoot off ICBM missiles, international continental ballistic missiles, onto Babylon the Great, that great whore that rideth upon the beast, the virgin daughter of Babylon, Sodom and Egypt, Nineveh, all these different names for America that are in the scriptures. And that great, or the great judgment for this whore is that right here. "And shall eat her flesh and burn her with fire." That fire is going to be those nuclear missiles. And we see basically from that article just a part of that coming to pass right now. Or we see a part of the reason why that's going to be the case, I should say. These other nations are at the point where they're saying, we're not trusting America anymore. And this is all biblical prophecy. And this is what's going to happen, because America, I'll say that America is going to lose World War III. All of that is biblical prophecy, because this great kingdom can't stand with Yahweh Shai's kingdom on its way. Because Yahweh Shai's kingdom, or let me say the kingdom of Yahweh by Hashem Yahushai is going to be on earth. That's why it talks about how when the Lord comes back, he's going to have many crowns upon his head, because he's going to be the one to wage war, and he's going to take the crowns off of these different nations, and they're not going to have rulership anymore. If anything, they're going to have their little smaller hills or smaller mountains set up under the big mountain or big government of Yahweh by Hashem Yahushai. So with that being said, I just wanted to bring that out, I guess to reload it, just so you guys can see the title of that article again if you wanted to read it. I like to always say it again at the end. It's Donald Trump has made U.S. an untrustworthy ally. NATO insider warns Putin handed gift. I do pray that this video was edifying. All praises, glory, and honor be to Yahweh by Hashem Yahushai, by Hashem Dash. Double honors to our elders and apostles of Great Millstone, and peace and blessings to the elect. Shalom.